Today, I'm speaking to the highly sensitive, highly empathetic people. In today's world, it can feel really, really difficult. And so I wanted to break it down. Is the world getting worse and worse and worse? Or are we just more predisposed to it? Today's podcast is me on my own, the first solo cast in a long time. And I'm just exploring some things that have been coming up in my head. Are algorithms exploiting our sensitivity? The danger of compassion fatigue, what that means for us as human beings with the people that we care about the most. The importance of looking after your algorithm and sorting it out and trying to take some power back. But ultimately, I just wanted to get curious about some of the things that we're experiencing in the world, what it means, and how sometimes the common narrative is not always the right narrative. Yeah. And so you need to look out for what's right for you as a highly sensitive person and what that means. So sit back, enjoy it, deal with my Marvin Gaye, husky, had the flu voice, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Dysfunction is everywhere, in our families, in our cultures, and in our systems. And this is Dysfunctional, the podcast that helps you name the things that most people can't or won't see. Let's call it out, break it down, and maybe even start a bloody revolution. So it's been a while, but we're back with a solo podcast for the first and probably last time again for a little while. Full disclosure, I've been a little bit I was going to say unorganized, but actually what's been happening is I've been creating the Inner You Facilitator breathwork training that is releasing today at the point of me recording this. When you're listening to this, it will mean it's fully released. Unless you're watching on YouTube, just as this has come out, then it will be being released today. But super excited about that. But what it's meant is that I haven't been able to record any episodes. I've got a load lined up this week, which will keep us going again for future weeks coming after this week. So that'll help. And then look, if you are somebody that has applied to be on the podcast and you're thinking, why aren't I in the mix? There is over 100 people on there. What is on my microphone? There is over 100 people on there. So we will get through them all. I will get to you. It's a little bit random in many ways how I pick them, if they just jump out or resonate for some reason, whatever that is. That's how you end up being on there. And as is usual, when I am recording myself, I just want to jump up and check that I am actually recording. And I am. So yeah, I don't know how long we'll go today, but I wanted to just talk about what it's like to be a highly sensitive person in the world at the moment. Or highly sensitive is the terminology that I use, but you might want to talk about being a highly empathetic person. I think it's a difficult world to be in now. And I feel like in many ways, our sensitivity, our empathy is being exploited. I would say that it is being exploited. And what I mean by that is, I think in some ways we're exploiting ourselves. I think that stress is becoming one of the predominant addictions, but it's being disguised as goodwill. And I want to challenge you, if you are a highly empathetic, highly sensitive person, I want to challenge you in this podcast to really think about what that means for you. I have had to really make a real conscious effort to step back from what I engage in and what I consume, because of the impact that it has on our bodies. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the way that we consume news, the way that we consume content, and those two things are heavily linked now. And just what that means. And it's born out of, I guess I'll start here, it's born out of what happened to Charlie Kirk when Charlie Kirk was shot. Now, Charlie Kirk's content was something that comes up on my phone a lot. Both before what happened, and since what happened, something that comes up on my phone a lot. I would say that generally speaking, most of the lens of which he sees the world through is different to mine. So I sort of disagreed with a lot of the things that he said, but sort of did it quite like him. I quite liked him as a debater. I think he's a good debater. But it was interesting that his content shows up a lot because it triggers my body in a certain way. And I love a good debate. I love a good discussion. So I would often try and sort of debate him as I watched him in my own head. I do feel like a lot of the content that I was exposed to of him, he was always debating somebody that certainly wasn't as good as him at debating. But that's why I will have always been shown those pieces of content, because they'll trigger me in that way, which I want to talk about. But anyway, I was playing football on the night that it happened, and we finished football, was in the changing rooms after the game. It was a late game, yeah, so I played over 35s football, so it's like a 9 p.m. kickoff, so it's like we get back in the changing rooms at like just gone 10 p.m, yeah. And forgive me, because I will need to keep taking a sip of my drink, because I've been very poorly, as you can probably tell in my voice. But we got in the changing rooms, and someone said, "Oh, have you heard about Charlie Kirk?" And I was like, and then he was like, "Do you know who that is?" And some people knew, and I was like, "Yeah, I know. What's happened? He'd been shot." I was like, "What?" "Yeah, he's been assassinated." "What?" And then it's like, "Look," and he showed me his phone, and you're watching it, and I don't really know what I thought, but I wasn't expecting to see him get shot. And then you just see him get shot, and that's it. Like, you see it. Like, it was crazy. And I instantly thought, I fucking didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see that. And yet, I sort of noticed in the aftermath of that that wasn't even really contested. So like if like a year ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I think there would have been a lot of like, stop sharing the video, it's disgusting, nobody wants to see it. And like, I did see a bit of that, but I think it's just sort of become normal that, oh no, he's shot, it was on camera, so we get to see it. And you're just seeing it again and again and again. And I was going to say whether you want to see it or not, but I do think there's that kind of like car crash thing in there where you don't want to see it, but you find yourself, and this is something that I want to get into talking a little bit about today. You find yourself like wanting to watch it, not wanting, that's the wrong word, but like being drawn to watch it again. You know what I mean? And there's something not right about that. And then, of course, you have all of the aftermath and stuff like that. And then everybody's talking about it, right? Everybody's talking about it, and everybody has an opinion on it. And it's sort of very in your face for a couple of days. And then it, until it disappears, because things don't stay in the sphere that long. And so it does and can feel like right now the world is a really awful place, and we're hearing it a lot, and I say it, there's sorry, the world feels like a horrible place to live in at the moment. But I really want to sort of like question, is it worse than it's ever been, or are we just constantly exposed to it now? And that's kind of the stuff that I want to get into. One of the things that I've realized through conversations that I've had recently with friends and people that I get to interact with, and I get to interact with a lot of sort of diverse, different type of people, is how many of us now hold strong opinions about things that we don't necessarily have a great link to, right? So I live in England, right? And so you hear about people talking about atrocities that are going on in different parts of the world that they have no influence over, and ultimately are not directly influenced by. Although if you think things through hard enough, if you look at things that are in Russia or things that are in America, these kind of things, when I'm in England, they may filter through and have an impact on me if I think about it hard enough. But is that healthy? That's the kind of question that I want to raise here. I think we have to have some understanding of the algorithms that we are now engaging with. Right? An algorithm's job is to keep you on whichever app you're looking at. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, Thread, whatever you're on, that has an algorithm that does its best to keep you on that platform. That's its job, to keep you watching, to keep you on there, yeah, so that it can feed you ads, because that's how they make their money, right? So this is well known now that I've talked about that car crash sort of mentality earlier. The things that trigger us the most are the things that will keep us locked in. So all the algorithm does is just learn what keeps you locked in, what triggers you the most. And so we're all like being fed down these rabbit holes ultimately of the things that trigger us the most. And so if I take my own personal experience, as I'm the child of an alcoholic, I lost my dad when I was young. I'm a white, straight man, whatever, terminologies that you want to use for me. And part of me is even worried that I'm using the right terminology, right? Which is, again, something of the world that we live in. But as the man that I am going to be fed different content to a brown gay person, for example, right? Because the way that I view the world, what triggers me is going to be different. But here's the bit for me where it starts to get a little bit sort of worrying, is the stuff that triggers me as an individual the most. If I'm being fed the content of that now, a lot of our content is now our news. So if you think about what happened to Charlie Kirk, I didn't watch one news program about what happened to Charlie Kirk. I did not see what happened to him broke on the news. I did not see it break on the news. I did not watch the news. I don't watch the news. I saw it break on social media. Social media is my news now. Social media, what I see on social media is how I shape my view of the world. And that's a fucking problem. That's a problem, because most people that put content on social media, even if they are now like individuals, what do they call them? But when things like this happen now, people have their own accounts where they report on it. They're not journalists. They're not anything. They're just somebody who's built a following. And if they've built a following, they've learned how to work with the algorithm. So they're going to give and feed on the main what the algorithm wants or works for them in terms of their audience. Right? So we have to we have to remember that what we're being fed online starts to feel like it's the reality, but it's actually a collection of pieces of content that trigger you the most, to keep you watching. And I was having a chat with Hass, who was on here last week. And of course, the Hass is going to be fed. Hass has got brown skin. I've got white skin. We used to have a whole podcast that was built around that premise. The stuff that triggers him is going to be different to the stuff that triggers me. But we are both going to be being fed whatever our most triggered opinion is. We are going to be fed content that confirms and furthers our bias into those beliefs. And that is what is fucking dangerous. Because now when I have a conversation with Hass, he sees the world, he sees what's going on in the world different to me, not just based on his personal experiences, but having his personal experiences affirmed by what he sees online to some degree. Now, we'd all like to think that we're stronger than our algorithms, right? That no, well, I'm brighter than that. I'm more clever than that. I go out and seek my information properly. I do my research. I'd like to think that I do that. But where's my research? It's fucking on my phone through algorithms. So the way that we see the world now is like a heightened version, and it's very difficult to come away from that than what our algorithms have fed us and than what our algorithms are teaching us. So we all start to see a worse version of the world that's like an amplified version of what scares and triggers us the most because of the algorithms. And if you were to ask 10 different people what the fallout has been from what happened to Charlie Kirk, for example, you're going to get 10 different views. And it's not just 10 different opinions anymore, right? It's going to be 10 different opinions that are shaped by the content that they engage with. And why is that different now to what it used to be? So if we go before the internet, if something like what happened to Charlie Kirk happened before the internet, and it fucking probably wouldn't have, right? But let's forget that context for a moment. If you bought a newspaper in the morning, you would have read a couple of pages about it. And if it was a big news, it was like most of the paper, yeah? But that was it. It was like most of the paper. Like back then, you'd get a couple of pages on it, and then all the other shit, all the other news needed to go in there as well. So it had to be like fucking, like a real, I remember 9/11, for example, the whole paper was about it. But it had to be something like that for the whole paper to go, we're not going to report on anything else. We're just going to report on this. So you would have, if you picked up a paper, you would have consumed it in the paper in the morning. And then if you watched the 10 o'clock news at night, and I think the news used to be on when you got home from work or school, what it was school for me, yeah? If you watched the news then and then you would be engaging in some form of content around it. Otherwise, you might talk about it to your mates. But it was hear about it in the morning and then conversations. Now, what's really important to remember here is that a conversation with a bunch of people about what you saw in the news in the morning is very, very different, very, very different to video content fed regularly. And so it's no wonder that we feel like the world is much worse now. It's because we're always being fed it. And again, let's not forget, right? This isn't just, here's the jump. And let's be really clear about the jump here. The jump is not reading the news and now, fucking hell, you can look at it on your lunch break and stuff like that. I was chatting to Hass and Ollie, who I was with last week when we was at, like, if you're out with somebody having dinner, they could pop to the toilet. They pop to the toilet, you get your phone out. Most of us will flick through social media in that 2 minutes. And in that 2 minutes, you might have seen atrocity in America, atrocity in Russia, atrocity in Gaza, in the space of a minute. And then your mate comes and sits back down. Let's just take a second to understand the severity of that. Then if I'm out for dinner in the way that I'm describing, then when I leave for dinner, between dinner and home, and then maybe while I get home, and then maybe while I put my head on the pillow, and while I'm fucking going to sleep, I'm seeing short form blasts of content in my mind about what's happened over and over and over again. And just for a second, think about what that does to people's nervous systems. So then, now we're all like, fuck, the world is fucking bad. There's so much terrible shit going on in the world. How do I cope? What do I do? And even if we're not rationally thinking that, what's it doing to our bodies and our nervous systems? Now, I take this a step further, and this is where I think it becomes problematic, is now that we can know about all of the atrocities in the world, you're then expected to have an opinion and to fucking make sure that you know and that you're up together with everything that's going on in the world. And we now have what becomes like this stress addiction, where everybody's addicted to fucking the stress and we don't know it, of what's going on in all these different places. But we don't call it stress addiction because we can hide the addiction behind, I'm a fucking good person, so I know what's going on. I know how bad it is in America. I know how bad it is in Russia. I know how bad it is in Gaza. But how much of that is like, you're like your addiction to stress, yeah, and just meeting that need of going back to that addiction of stress. And I'm questioning this. I'm asking it, and who gets to decide what things you should like? By the way, I keep naming 3 things like that because they're 3 things that are big things that seem to be in my ecosystem of news regularly at the moment. And by news, I mean social media. Yeah. But there's atrocities going on in the world everywhere, and I don't know all about them. Who gets to decide the atrocities that I should know about? And who gets to decide the ones that are the most prominent? Who gets to decide that I'm a bad person if I'm not up together with all of these things? Who gets to decide what level of stress my system and my empathy should be able to keep up with? You see, I talk about an example, talked about it recently on LinkedIn, but there's a prime example here. Less than a year ago, if you weren't fully up together with what was going on, the plight of the Ukrainians, you were a disgusting human being. Now that's sort of quietened down. Yeah? It don't matter as much if you don't know what's going on in there. Why? Because it's just less popular in the news now. It's not, it's not as big on our social media feeds. And so you can kind of get away with not knowing about it. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that I do think that now that we should try to have an understanding of what's going on in the world and the plight of human beings. But I just don't think that we're supposed to know about it every second of the day. And I don't think we're supposed to know about every atrocity. I think as human beings, we're supposed to pick our things that we want to have a level of activism about, and direct our empathy there. Like the saying is, empathy without boundaries is self-destructive. And I've been forced, since growing a following and doing the work that I do, I've been forced to get much better at, because people send me their stories all of the time, right? And I used to fucking read every single one of them. And at some point, I had to say, I can read some and I'll try and read some and I try and respond to some, but I can't read all of them. And so how do I pick that? How do I pick the ones that I read? Well, it's just fucking, if I feel like I've got a bit of space, I'll read some of them. But that's not, the ones that I don't read are not that I'm a fucking bad person because I'm not up together on that. And we need to be a little bit more, we need to have a bit more understanding about that in the world and what's going on. Not, we're losing people, we lose people to suicide all of the time. Yeah. We're losing people to suicide all of the time. And if you've got your own shit going on, sometimes you can't see past your own stuff. And then to be fed on social media, what, you fucking don't know what's going on over there? How can you just get on with your life? And sometimes it's I haven't got a choice but to try and just get on with my life because I'm fucking spiraling in my own world. And there's this kind of virtuous thing that's going on now where it's I'm a fucking better person than you because what? Because you're posting on social media about it. And we're all guilty of this. I'm guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm not. But I do think that we need to get back to understanding that in society there are some people are really good at passionately raising awareness for foreign aid. So I've got friends that do some amazing charity work for schools in Rwanda. Yeah. That's great. They're passionate about that. They will go out and they will try and get everybody to you need to see about this. Please just understand what it's like for them and the lack of education and stuff like that. And how I want to help there. And it's great. That's great that you're doing that. You should promote that. Right. And then there's people that do work in their local communities. I've put a lot of empathy and compassion into supporting children of alcoholics over the years because that's my thing. That's my bag. And I'll try and get as many people to help as I can, but understand that you might not have the time because you might be doing your thing over there. But now there's this kind of slap is in your face content all of the time. Look at these atrocities. Look at these atrocities. What are you doing about it? If you're not doing anything about it, you're a fucking bad person. How can you let this go on? And I just don't think that we're, as human beings, meant to be able to deal with that. And if you're a highly sensitive person, it can be overwhelming. You can start to think that you're a bad person, but you have to look after yourself, man, in the way that works for you. Otherwise, here's what I think's happening, and here's where I think that we need to be clear about it. We're losing sight. I think we are forcing our phones and our devices and what we're viewing on them are forcing us into compassion fatigue. And so we're doing this real activism stuff online, all of this. What are we doing for our friends? Because I think what happens is you forget that your elderly neighbor's partner died last year. And even if you do remember, you're like, fucking so? That was last year. Have you seen these? That pales to insignificance to what's going on over here. And it's like, man, we cannot overload ourselves so that we forget the importance of being there for one another. We can't forget the importance for your close community, the people that are near you, the human beings that you see face to face on a day-to-day basis. You need to, we're all out of compassion and empathy by the time we meet up with each other because we've had to become fucking numb to it. We've had to numb ourselves out because we're so engaged all of the time online with all of these terrible things that are happening. And it's not that we don't care, it's that we care too much. I don't think we're designed, I say it again, I don't think we're designed to see the global atrocities in the way that we do online all of the time. And it's wearing us down. And it's cutting our empathy that we need for the small moments in our lives with the people that we care about the most as well. That's what I'm questioning, and that's what I'm asking about. So what do we do about it? Look, I think that if you're a kind, caring, compassionate, empathetic, sensitive person, I think you should find the things that you're really passionate about changing, focus on them, and really give as much energy to them, whatever that is. And it might be one of the atrocities that's going on in the world right now. That might become your focus, and that's great. That's your thing. But focus on that. Focus on actually trying to make some meaningful change. Otherwise, you'll try and be something for everybody and you end up being nothing for no one. And that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody. Unless you think that a virtuous post on your social media really has an impact. Where can you make some real meaningful impact change in your life? And that, like I say, that could be using your social media as an activism platform to try and get people to see the atrocity that you're passionate about. I'm not saying people should stop doing any of that. I think it's great that all of those things exist, and we have to come back down to a cellular level for ourselves and think, what does this mean for me and what can I affect? Otherwise, we're just lost. And people are now out, they're making you feel bad if you're not doing stuff about certain things. Let me give you a bit of an analogy. I have become very comfortable with saying no thank you to people that on the streets that ask me to give to charity, because I can confidently look them in the eye and say I do everything that I can for charity. And I've picked the ones that I do, and I give my time and devotion to them. I hope somebody helps the charity that you're promoting, but I've done all that I can, and that's where my energy goes. Yeah, and I think we need to do that on a broader level with all of our empathy, in a more sort of what am I talking about here? A clear way of things that you can actually do. Every Sunday night, dedicate to clearing up your algorithm. So Sunday night for an hour, or whatever night it is, whenever you've got some time, for an hour, search on your main platform that you watch your videos on. And mine too are separate. I'll show you what I do with them. I try and keep TikTok to being like my music one. So like I'll search like grime stuff or like bootleg grime music or punk music. And then on Instagram, it's like funny, silly stuff or football tackles or old footballers talking. Just so that my algorithm starts to re-show me that stuff. And I clear up some of these fucking, dark rabbit holes that I've found myself going down. And that's how, we say that we're slaves to the algorithm, and we are to a degree, but we've got to try and clear things up in that way. Do you know what I mean? Clear your algorithm up and take some control back in that way. I think I'm done, man. It's been nice to sit down and do this. I missed the guests. I'm really enjoying interviewing people and having guests on the podcast now. I feel like I've really evolved as a human being actually doing that and being able to be really, really curious with people. If there are people that you can think of that you think should come on, let me know. Like I say, there is a massive list of people that I'm working through. If you're one of them, we will get to you, I promise. And thanks for all the support. Like I say, just from a personal level, my facilitator training launches today, and I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous about, when I create things, I spent months and months and months creating it, and then when you create it and put it out there, you're just like, fuck, man, what if it's shit? What if people don't like it? What if it's not good enough? What if people think I'm trying to fucking mug them off and all that sort of stuff? All of that stuff goes through your head, man. But what I can be confident is that I've tried my best and I've put everything into it. And I love that it's the community aspect as well, so it'll always be changing and growing and evolving. And yeah, I'm off to LA next week. I'm very, very excited about that. And yeah, we keep moving. But listen, I hope that, to be honest with you, this is not, when I sit down and do these podcasts on my own, they're not overly planned. I just think, right, fucking turn it on and we'll see where we go. So yeah, look, I hope that what I've said made sense. And in many ways, I'm just curious about stuff. I'm always questioning things. I'm always challenging the sort of common narrative. That's part of who I am. That's part of what I do. So yeah, feel free to challenge anything I've said. And I guess the big question is the world worse than it's ever been? Or are we just being fed the constant information all of the time? Who knows? I don't know what the answer is. But what I do know is that when I switch off my device and I'm not fucking scrolling on social media, the world feels like a better place. It really does feel like a better place. So take from that what you will. I've really enjoyed this. Big love to you all, and I'll see you on the next episode. I did tell you it would be dysfunctional, so thank you for sticking around till the end here. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please help me to grow Dysfunctional by sharing with your friends on social media. You can find me at Josh_FFW. And then wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please make sure that you've liked and subscribed, left us a 5-star review and a comment if your platform allows it. And I'll see you on the next one.